It's Friday, and welcome to Cutting Down the Nets. We are going to talk college basketball betting for the somewhat larger Friday slate than what I am used to in past years. Typically on a Friday, I'd be sitting in a conference room trying to pay attention and handicapping games on my phone, and there'd be like I don't know, five Ivy games because they always play on Fridays and Saturdays. Splash in a couple of Horizon matchups, but I think there's like 35, 40 games today, which makes it kind of fun. So we will go through results, schedule, form a little pool to choose from, and there's a theme with today's games, in my opinion, and we'll see what you think about that as well. So let's get to the business of yesterday. We are not back to the Lebowski gif. We are still in the ICU. Went 2-2, lost the late game that would have made the difference yesterday. It was officials allowing tackling in the Michigan State Ohio State game. It went both ways. I mean, I'm not going to blame refs for losing a bet, but an extremely physical game down low certainly benefited Michigan State style at home. So Holtman about lost his mind a couple times, and he got Izzo'd. That's what happens when you play at Michigan State when they're on the bubble. There's just a lot going against you, is what I would say. Yesterday, I highlighted that there was a lot of games with risk. So what I mean by that is some things are just hard to predict. Obviously, basketball is hard to predict, even if you had very consistent data throughout the whole year. There's still a lot of variance in the game of basketball. We saw that yesterday. I mean, Ohio State led until 3 minutes to go. You miss a couple calls, and the game goes sideways. It's frustrating. So what I mean is, in a high variance sport, you also have to deal with high variance teams. Some teams are very consistent, some teams are very inconsistent. Typically, the inconsistent teams are teams that get a lot of points through the 3-point line. Teams like Alabama come to mind. They're just a little more volatile because of the style that they play. But sometimes teams' profiles are volatile. So I'm going to pull up a game I handicapped earlier. This is Louisiana Lafayette. And I want you to look at the middle of the screen. So right past where we get the results of the game and then the record and then the wins above bubble. Look at those adjusted offensive and defensive efficiencies. So first month of the season, a bad offensive team and a very good defensive team. A middling team in the middle, and now all of a sudden they're very good offensively and can't stop anyone. This is what I mean by what am I going to do with this? I mean, I think when you mash this up, it's going to be, yeah, this is a pretty average team. But if you're trying to predict an outcome, this is a profile that is frustrating to me because I just don't know what to do with it. So that's just one example. There was plenty of those examples today. So this was my pool, and I only landed on 4 games out of this pool. So similar to yesterday, where it's like there's a lot of value there. And I think in the past, I would have probably overbet this slate. And I'm not saying the 4 I'm picking are the locks or anything like that, but I'm trying to minimize that risk the best I can. All right, first game, New Mexico State at Tarleton. Yes, Tarleton is a real team, and they're actually coached by Billy Gillispie, if you remember him for being a crazy person. But he actually, I mean, guy can coach. So New Mexico State comes in as an 8.5-point favorite. I have this closer to a pick 'em. Here's the risk with this game. New Mexico State has only played 12 games. And as recent as 1 month ago, on like January 25th, they played their 4th game of the year. So they've kind of caught up and they've got a data set now. But how do you even deal with that? And I respect New Mexico State as a program, and I think that they're going to end up in a good spot. Maybe they'll, cause some havoc in their conference tourney. So I think that 8.5 line is more of a respect line, and I feel bad for bookmakers having to make a line on teams with such imbalanced schedules. So I am going to stay away from that one, but data suggests it. It's just a weird game in my opinion. I see less risk with the next one, so I'm going to fire that up. We'll get into details on that. North Texas Marshall. There's always risk in betting a Marshall game because they shoot between 28 and 35 three-pointers a game, so they are a high variance team. Drexel and James Madison are both coming off some scheduled breaks. Drexel's was longer than James Madison's. Arkansas State and UTA, Texas Arlington. I have Arkansas State as the better team, but both these teams are not very good. UTA has consistently struggled offensively, but um, Arkansas State is one of those inconsistent profiles. They have had adjusted offensive efficiencies in the 80s multiple times, like 5, 6 times. They've had adjusted offensive efficiencies above 120 multiple times. So I just don't like when a profile looks like that, and that's why my model gets stronger as the season goes on. So I'm just not willing to take some unnecessary stands there. Next up, ULL, that's Louisiana Lafayette. We just looked at their profile, so I mean, you saw it, and I have them as the better team than Little Rock, but both teams are inconsistent. Neither team's very good. There's some risk involved. I do like Bryant in this spot, but thanks to COVID, these teams also played last night, so one of those dreaded back-to-backs that I have not been able to get right this year, and it doesn't mean bet the other side. It doesn't mean chase a narrative. I'm not gonna look at like they're usually better in the second game of a back like that. I'm not going there. So I'm not saying bet the other side if I'm indecisive. I'm saying I'm just not betting the game. Gonna sit it out. My alma mater, UNI at Illinois State. I had to massage this one down and still had Illinois State favored as a slight favorite. The model spit out Illinois State as I think like a 3.8 point favorite, and the reasons for that was two very recent games with extreme outcomes, and I just tossed them out, and I still have Illinois State as a favorite. So it turned a potential great play into an okay play, and I feel like I've done enough adjustments for that game. UMKC and South Dakota State. UMKC is an awful offensive team. I don't like betting on awful offensive teams. They are good defensively, but in a road game at South Dakota State, just no reason to bet it. I will sit that one out. Drake and Bradley. This one's kind of interesting. Drake's been the cover monsters all year. They are now without Roman Penn, and they are already out with Hempel, who has been missing the last couple weeks. And Hempel will return at some point. I hope Drake gets into the tourney, but Roman Penn is out. Broken foot, he's done. So Yosefu, and my Des Moines friends can tell me if I'm pronouncing that right. He has scored like 30 a game since Penn's been out, so it doesn't seem like there's a drop off. Those are two entirely different players, in my opinion. Yosefu is more of a chucker, as evidenced by scoring that many points, but I don't know. Those guys have been through a lot this year, and it just seems like they're getting through it just fine. So I get it. The fact that the line is 9 obviously accounts for Penn being out. I'm just going to sit that one out as well. And then you see the remaining games. South Alabama I have as a small favorite. They're getting some points, so there's some value there. Akron is a pretty decent bet here against Bowling Green. I will probably have a small play on that, but I'm not sure. John Grosh is he's the worst. And then we kind of round out our schedule. Be careful with Wagner and Central Connecticut as those teams played yesterday. So that's the main pool to choose from. What I try to do is end up with the games with the less risk or the least amount of risk and play those. I also like to highlight popular games for the day. So there's really only one. I've got this very close, Purdue and Penn State. So I've got Purdue by 1. Vegas has Penn State by 1. It's close. Like, I don't know. I'm not betting that game. Probably won't watch it either. So good luck to those guys. So I landed on 4. I am going to go with the Roadrunners. I like getting 4 points in a game where I have the other team favored. If we lost some value on that, I'd go all the way down to +2. I'm just kind of in on this game. I'm fine with it. And will ride the Roadrunners, good or bad. Next up, North Texas. I mentioned the risk in this game is you're playing Marshall, which is a high variance team, but North Texas is flat out good. It's a very solid team. They are good offensively. They do limit the 3. I don't think you really can limit the 3 against Marshall, but at least they have some defensive focus on that could get Marshall out of the rhythm. But that's going down like matchup, narrative street. I don't do that. That's not me. So I am taking North Texas. Next up, I'm going to take this guy by himself, old and disheveled, to beat Drexel. So I have this game by James Madison by 7. And if we lost some value, I'd play it up to 3. James Madison has not played in, I think, about 11 or 12 days, but Drexel has also missed time. They've actually been out 19 or 20 days. So I think the schedule factor balances out, and if this was a routine schedule, I'd have zero hesitation betting James Madison. So I just have a slight hesitation today, but I will take James Madison. Give me this guy to beat Drexel today. Final game, I will take Illinois State against my alma mater. I tweaked my initial line and gave some points away from Illinois State as it was a stronger play early on. And they had, like I mentioned, a game that was just affecting their offensive efficiency a little too much. One good performance had bumped that 98 up in my model to like 102, which made it a really strong play. And I reduced that, and it's still a good play. Good enough for me to bet. I'm going to do it. So there you have it. Just 4 games. Tomorrow will be Saturday, which could be a large card. We've seen somewhere between 8 and 12. But we'll see what tomorrow holds. So good luck on this Friday, and we'll see you tomorrow.